this computer? Share screen, Habatat Now, share. All right, so now we're starting off. We're going to show a short movie here of Tim Tate and Michael Janis's presentation they gave to us for Glass48, though we edited it down a little bit so it won't last as long. So it might be a little choppy, so just feel free to enjoy it, and I look forward to talking more about it once we get started.
It's only 3 minutes, so it's not long. Cut down from 30.
Welcome to Washington Glass School, just outside of Washington, D.C. I'm Michael Janis.
I'm Tim Tate.
We're going to take you on a very short video tour of our...
Sorry about that. Try to turn the volume up a little bit. It seems like it's down low.
That was beautiful, Tim.
Studio to show you what we're working on. Our studio set up. Come on in.
Oh, funny. There's the full studio. Remember, Michael and I did a collaborative piece of the wall, the last sofa, and also one for St. Petersburg. This is the same mixture of 3 techniques. You have Michael's powder drawings that are so gorgeous. You've got my cast objects, and Michael and I have taught this 3-dimensional bas relief all over the world, that deeply dry plaster casting. So we decided to combine those 3 techniques into making these particular pieces. This is called The Best Is Yet to Be, with the Robert Browning poem being Grow Old With Me, The Best Is Yet to Come. That was kind of our springboard of images of love. So all these 4 of these show. And the second one we did is called Lending Library. This one represents the title of 8 different books. And one of the fun of this is trying to have people guess what is the title of each of those books. I think the only hint I'll give this one. This is Frankenstein. Oh. But I figured I'll figure that one. The other one, you have 7 other titles to guess. Some are more obtuse than others, but you'll get them when you as soon as you get them, you'll go, of course.
Now, this technique, we've done it for a number of artwork collaboration panels. And the panel next to it, which is the longing for transcendence, is more about spiritual qualities that are expressed in the glass work.
One of the things we really want to show is dimensionality. You see how the light refracts through this. Every piece is built up in layers. It's sort of like almost a collage. So all these molds were designed to make sure there was all this texture to it.
This is a work that I'm still in the process of working on. It's about relationships and the walls that we have to build up, especially in this day and age where we want a certain amount of distance. Around here is one of your other large works, Mr. Tate.
Here's one of the large infinity pieces. This is a Dutch master study, a Dutch floral study, in the sense of old Dutch master floral studies that I love so much. And so I did my own kind of version on this. All this is cast individual objects, and of course all in that beautiful kind of butterscotch color and intimacy going on.
And just going around the studio, I see that you have another collaborative piece.
I do. This one is from Kathleen Elliott and I together. She does absolutely stunning nature studies and lamp work, and I thought it was just perfect to go inside of an endless mirror. So here it is, me just now putting it together. She sent me all the parts, and now the next thing will happen, I'll put it into the mirror frame.
It's really nice. And over here is one of my other pieces that I'm going to be submitting for Habitat's show on their part of their 48th anniversary show. I think that's why they're calling it Glass48. And again, it's using the frit powders to be as expressive as I can to create an imagery that's very evocative yet compelling, and kind of draws you in about finding out qualities of the person and their identity in the glass work.
Thank you guys for that.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go. So without further ado, I'll introduce Tim Tate and Michael Janis.
Hey there.
Hi, both. Thank you so much for having us today. I know you normally are used to me kind of helping Mary Lee host some of the fun events, but it's nice to be here as an artist presenting the work.
Yeah, and it's nice to kind of get together with all you people and kind of give a talk, even though we're all separated by the size of a country. But we'll give a quick indication. This is going to be like a PowerPoint presentation showing you our how we make the work and a little bit more information about our work. The first image is, Tim and I have worked together for a long time now. The first one's at Penland, around 2005.
Something like that. That's about 15 years ago.
Yeah. So,
I was still blowing, so.
Yeah, the years have not been, oh, baby, there. Next
What was
slide.
that?
No, no.
Sorry.
Next slide. The baby again.
There we go.
We teach all over, and one of the places we teach was at Penland. We teach a lot of different techniques, and we kind of focused on the dry plaster technique, and worked with a lot of different people, and kind of let the work evolve as we go along in the years, and how we express stories with it.
You know,
Next
we've taught this process all over the world,
Next
as you'll
slide.
see. Next slide. All right, so anyway, we've taught it in many places all over the world.
Yeah.
Michael has a collection of terrifying photos. I was really horrified that he was actually dancing, but we've taught this process all over the world, and we always thought that someone would run with it. We taught it for, almost 15 years, and then last year, Michael and I said, instead of waiting for someone to take this technique seriously, let's you and I get together and make it like we always thought someone else should be doing. And that's how we first started doing these walls.
Yeah. Next slide. We also had gotten a Fulbright scholarship, and we went to the National Glass Center in UK, which is at the University of Sunderland. And they have a huge facility. So it was a really good thing to be teaching it out there to their university students. And we even had one of their students come and do a residency here in DC from that.
We did. And that's Michael and I in front of George Washington's ancestral home. We went there on the Sister City program because it's the only non-national capital to be a sister city to Washington, D.C., because that's where George Washington's family came from. Enough history. All right, move on.
Well, we also teach the technique here in Washington, D.C. at our studio. We have a learning component in our studio, and we have a lot of people come in, and we do a lot of projects using the dry plaster technique. And we actually, the guy in the center of the image is an architect, and he worked for Safeway supermarkets here in the mid-Atlantic coast. And we did I did a very large exterior project as a result of that connection. The next slide. We actually did their whole facade in Bethesda, where it was made out of cast glass, and we actually used recycled glass for this project in Bethesda. Next slide.
We do a lot of public art in Washington, D.C., much of it using the technique we're going to show you today. Like that particular arch, which is beautiful at night and during the day, but we do a lot of large-scale public art in the region here. A lot of people said, how can you have glass? You know, we have gangs here. They're going to get destroyed. So we say, bring us the gangs. They're just kids to us, right? We'll have them make some of the tiles, and then no one will ever touch them. And that's exactly what happens. The people there who make it take ownership of it and don't want anyone to touch the art. And we are in some of the more challenged areas in the city, and we have some beautiful pieces all around DC.
This is one at the Laurel Library, which is a suburb just outside of DC, and they wanted very much to have the themes of books and stories to engage the kids that were going to be there, so that they felt like they were a part of it and understand the relationship of the artwork with the building. And we have a lot of different techniques in there, and we like the scale of it. You know, so it's like 17 feet tall. Next slide. And it actually had the building had won an AIA award, and the jurors for the American Institute of Architecture had talked about the artwork as being something that added to their selection of that building.
You know, those little kids keep putting stickers on the low ones, though.
Yeah, they would call us up. The neighbors would call us up saying, you've got to fix this artwork, because they've taken ownership of it. They show it off whenever they come around. And the nice thing about glass is that you could scrape off that kind of stuff. And we do have people who are proud of their artwork in front of their building. Okay, this is actually the process of what we're doing. This is how we make the dimensional casting. We're showing you what we're doing inside the kiln. We're using dry plaster, so it's molding plaster, it's pottery plaster, it's sifted into dams that we build inside the kiln, and we screen it level.
We use no water whatsoever. This is all done with just sifted plaster. So it feels just like sifted cake flour when you finish.
Yeah, it is like cake flour. It's like confectionery sugar. It's so fine. Next slide. And when you screen it off and it's so fine in there, and you press down there, it records everything, every detail in that plaster.
If I put my hand there, you will see my fingerprints. That's how much detail it is. So in a way, it's very similar to sand casting, except for the detail is astounding. I can also control the thickness of the tiles, and I don't need a furnace.
And the glass gets melted into there, and it picks up all that detail. You do see fingerprints, so if you are not careful and you were kind of clumsy as you're putting it in, your hand part is now part of the artwork. So if you want that to be your artist statement, I'm always saying then, by all means, just go in there real fast and slap it down. But otherwise, it is a matter of, it picks up every detail, the glass melts into it, and then as it cools, we're able to pull out the glass. Next slide. And this is the process. Yeah, the plaster is just powder, so we're able to brush it right off and reuse it.
And you can use it for years. So you never have to buy new material.
Well, I do kind of mix it, take it out a little bit and bring in new.
A little bit.
And then we're able to affect the glass because Tim likes to have a stronger read in it and a little bit be more of a powerful statement. So he's rubbing in different inks or paints into it.
It also shifts the color from that kind of happy blue that you see me taking out of the kiln into this kind of beautiful olive. I like tertiary colors more than I like primary or secondary. So it gives us detail and also shifts the color into that region.
Next slide. And I do a drawing technique where I'm using the crushed glass powder. I'm calling it the sgraffito technique. So I'm sifting glass powder onto sheets of flat glass and pushing it around with an X-Acto blade to do, in a sense, like drawings or images in there. And then I fire the glass to be very similar in hand to the cast glass. So it feels like these are all from the same process. Next slide. And Tim also does a lot of casting pieces.
Yeah, I do a lot of castings. As people know, I've done these castings in my domes. I have hundreds and hundreds of molds because over the years I've made so many. So we decided that the walls, the beautiful part about the walls is you have three-dimensional, you have the two-dimensional drawings of Michael, and we have the bas relief in between. That's what gives these walls so much depth because we're working on 3 levels on each of the walls.
Yeah, does anyone have any questions about what we're doing so far?
I do, Mike. How do you guys make the stamps or the molds that you use to press into the plaster?
Oh, it's going to be a lot of different ways. Sometimes I'm actually making a clay object and then firing it and then putting it in there. Sometimes they're a found object. Sometimes there are things like if you take a light bulb and you just use the end of it, you can tell a pattern or a story that you are taking away from the original object and it becomes its own read because you've abstracted that form rather than the color. And I'm not sure what the baby does, but it's integral to the artwork.
Aaron.
Sorry. I'm repairing it. I lost my slides. Hold on a second. Sorry.
Oh my Lord.
That's the baby's head into the plaster. What the heck?
The good thing it's a cute baby.
We'll be back in no time. I apologize.
If you take a look at the castings that he's there, for instance, on those castings, the chicken, we made a mold of a found object. The shoes, the double-headed crow, all the flowers, and the head were all done in clay first. And after we made them in clay, then we made a mold of the clay. So what looks on the surface is something very simple, actually is quite involved in the full process to get to the moment where we press it into that plaster.
But we have these like shelves and cabinets filled with these kind of objects that we've made as like an image library. So we can start using them again and again and use them as a shorthand of a way to tell a story.
We literally have thousands of objects we've done. This is a good slide, Michael. Go ahead.
Okay, well, this is when we start, after we're at a certain point going through these things, we start saying, what is the story we're telling with it? And we were both storytellers, Tim and I, and we, you know, I like to start saying, what's the relationship of one panel next to the next, because now there's a dialogue there.
So Michael, being OCD as he is, we take every tile we make, we photograph it, we put it into little tiny, 2-inch pieces, and we move the paper that you see in the top left all around till we get it to where the story is being told. To us, each of those tiles is like a chapter in this novel. Even after we spend countless hours discussing how these papers, each of the tiles are going to be going into the frame, we then put it onto the ground, we put all the pieces in, and we still move it yet again, of course.
And we have actually made new tiles after we're there saying that's the wrong piece and it needs something different. So it does have us, that's our last moment of saying, is this how you want it to really read together? And it is, I don't think it's OCD, I mean, any more than moving around grain by grain pieces of fret powder on a piece of glass.
Oh, yeah, no more than that, right, exactly.
It's easier to move around a photograph than it is to move around a big piece of glass.
It's true, it's true. This is from the very first panel we did. And it was such a big deal that's Nora Atkinson, the curator of the Renwick on the left there, just coming in because she heard about it. She wanted to come see it. We couldn't have been prouder, because what we realized at that moment is we finally took a technique we've been teaching for 15 years with all the seriousness it should have been taken with from the beginning. And because of it, it is a joy to make these. We get along so well making these. We should make these all the time, because
we get along better making the artwork than we do sitting back to back in our studio working. But that's the way it is.
We love
I think we have both a common vision, and this is the finished piece of that first one. And it was shown at Habatat's pop-up show during SOFA. And
we'll always have a fond spot for our first child. This is it.
It's 9 feet wide by 6 feet high, and it has a lot of different elements going on, but it works as a cohesive whole.
Yeah. You can see how there's 3-dimensional objects, there's 2-dimensional, and all the bas relief, and that's what gives, even in this photograph, it seems a bit flat. In person, they're not flat. They have kind of a beautiful depth to them.
Tim, do you have to be careful with the plaster? It looks like it's very powdery. Do you have to be careful you don't inhale any?
Well, with plaster is not like silica. We don't add silica. So it's just regular dry plaster. It doesn't really float up, and it is quite fine.
Would you discuss the story behind your first one, please?
Go ahead, Mr. Michael.
Well, it's a thing about, we wanted to tell a story about like an arc of a person's life, that kind of thing, and all the aspects that go through their life. I wanted to have things about love, about loss, about connections, about a lot of different things. We just said, let's make it as broad as possible. It's almost like a man in nature kind of feeling.
We wanted to feel like, and nature was definitely an overrider to it, but we wanted to be like someone looking back over their life and seeing the highlights and joys of their life. Now, the next one we do is much more on that. This one is a little bit more in nature, but at that point we wanted to use nature and life together in this particular one. So all this, if you look around, most of these are about nature and memory. And every time we came up with it, and we had many more than this. In fact, we've made now several hundred different tiles with different meanings. But we agonize over exactly which one goes in all of these pieces. So each one has that chapter of that book, and each one tells its story in that field.
Next slide.
Well, I also must add that it looks amazing in its permanent installation, and it is a stunning work. Congratulations to you both.
Thanks. I've only seen it in pictures. I can't wait to go in person and see it.
I wonder if you tell the story of a couple of the tiles. I think that'd be really interesting.
Sure. if we take a look, there's one in a boat. As you see someone fishing, I mean, everybody as kids, we all went fishing with our folks, right? The hammers that you're seeing there on the bottom, that actually was a hammer that Kay used and I had as a 14-year-old, that my first hammer I ever got, my little miniature 14-year-old tool set. And those are things from childhood and memories. So everything we try to make it broader than just, you know,
Here's a hammer. I use this hammer. Yeah. I like the idea of tools as a metaphor. I like that, you know, it's something that you use by hand to create something new. So I like the more allegorical nature of that image. And I also like the form of it. I'm going backwards and forwards in what the metaphor could be. And also, what does it look like when it's cast? Because it has to be something that's a nice tactile. I want you to walk up to the piece and almost want to pet it. So it has a really nice hand to it.
So here's the one with the red figure. I can tell you exactly what that one's about. That is the role of chance in our lives. That figure is holding 2 dice, rolled 7, and it's surrounded by stars. Like, you know, it's in the stars. In other words, what is our life going to be? It's all by chance. So that's exactly what that one is. Just to give you an idea of one.
And Tim and I,
all of them have very specific meanings, though, and we spend a lot of time doing that. All right, sorry, go ahead.
well, Tim and I show a lot together in a lot of the art fairs, and we've been, like, this photo is from Miami Art Week, and we're at Pulse. And so it was a nice idea that we start saying, let's start doing these kind of collaborations online. And since the world has changed, we're no longer, we had made a lot of artwork that was going to be at Habitat, but if people can't get to the international, we're going to have to find a way to start bringing the art fairs to the people. So we're doing a thing with Habitat on Artsy, which is an online gallery, and we're able to start doing the art shows online, so you can see a lot of the artwork on your computers.
It's interesting. Artsy.net has sort of become the New York of online. In other words, artists and galleries from over the entire world show. Right now, I went to look at the show we were in. I thought, well, I'll just thumb through current shows on Artsy. 2.5 hours later, and over 700 galleries later, I found us in there. It is a gigantic New York worldwide. They've kind of taken this on. And Habitat's using some of this as a platform for them as well. All right, Mr. Michael.
This is one of the works. You had seen it actually in that little promo video that we had done, but it's a little bit nicer that you can see it up close. And this is the title of the piece, is The Best Is Yet to Be. And it's a little bit more about love, you know, the thoughts of love and what can happen and memory. And
there's a lover's eye at the bottom there, like because they in Victorian times, women would wear a portrait of their lover in a locket. So if it was ever found, you would not know who the actual lover was. And I used to do the tours at the Smithsonian American Art Museum, and that's where we first learned about lover's eyes. All right, sorry, Michael. That was a side note that we didn't intend. Go ahead.
next slide. And you can see some of the detail and how much is in there. And I like the little roulette wheel that Tim has in cast, because there's always a chance when you're in love that what happens, you know, there is a bit of a risk involved.
There we are with the stars around it again. All right. This
This
one
is Lending Library.
Lending Library is, we have 8 titles of books around there. And you all know Frankenstein is the left one. Can you think of any of the other titles? Is anyone there? Can they guess any of the titles there?
Of Mice and Men?
Of Mice and Men is one for sure. That's that.
Yes.
That's the one at 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Oh, he can't hear now.
The Goldfinch.
The
Yes.
Goldfinch is the top one. Yes.
Ding, 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 ding.
A Tale of Two Cities.
That is
Yes.
exactly right. Oh my God, Giselle, hi, sweetie.
Hello.
Yes, that's the one on the right-hand side, Tale of Two Cities. You see the reflection of the two cities going back and forth.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Next slide.
Oh, that was the Hitchhiker.
Next,
The
yeah.
Hitchhiker's
And you can still
Guide.
start
It was,
seeing
it's the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe, you're
Yeah.
right.
But you can see that we're trying to play with the whole qualities of glass, that there's a translucency and there's a hand to it. You want to touch it. You want to feel it, because it does have a sensual quality to the material. And that was something we want to really exploit. This is what, again, one of the larger pieces. It's 6 foot by 9 foot. And this is Traces of Memory, where we said, let's just really focus on thoughts and connections that way. There's aspects of love and secrets and games and childhood that are
Hey, look,
parts of
this one, the guy fell out of the boat.
yeah, thanks.
Oh, sorry. All right. This one was really close to our hearts in the sense that it wasn't necessarily overridden by nature, although we do have lots of scenes of nature, but we also did things that, like up in the top left, next to the yoga player to the right, is a cassette deck with pencils around it where we'd wind and rewind, where everyone got mixed tapes, to your loved one. People made mixed tapes. So everything has its own, meaning as you go through here.
The camera piece that I have in there, I had people who are camera fanatics saying, oh my God, they love that camera.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Yeah, these works you can explore for hours. They're just stunning and really deep. And thank you guys for making such beautiful work.
Thank you. Well, I do like the idea that you have multiple reads, that when you see it one time, you have a different feel. And because it's glass, how the lighting affects it, especially with the dimensional pieces on there, you have a different take on it because the way that the room and the lighting changes the quality of the piece.
Like that cup is really only half a cup, and it's put onto a mirror, so it just looks like a full cup.
Mm.
All right. Any questions before we go back one, Aaron? Is there any questions about any of the wall type panels or that deeply dry plaster casting technique that anyone has now before we move on to our 2 solo shows on Artsy?
Tim,
Yes,
can you talk about once the impression is in the plaster,
Mhm.
can you pour the liquid glass into that? How stable is that?
Okay. I'll tell you exactly how it
That's
is.
a step I didn't see.
Well, you don't pour glass in. You take 2 sheets of plate glass or bullseye glass or whatever you use, sheet glass, and you lay the sheet glass straight down on top of that plaster.
Right.
And as it heats up, the heat of the kiln binds the plaster because the molecules expand just enough to harden the plaster into a mold. The glass then melts into that hardened plaster, and when it cools, it goes back to being as soft as cake flour again. A very strange phenomenon that occurs. But that phenomenon makes some of the best red cast tiles you can possibly get.
And thank you. And can you talk a little bit about the surface embellishment, the color?
The color. Okay, so the color of the glass is always a different color than you're seeing, because when we rub black into it, it knocks back the kind of happy color that it is a little bit. And we do that intentionally. So we usually start with a tone that's much brighter than we normally would do. Because when we rub the black in, it gives the detail of everything you see. If you look at those small children on top, you see their eyes and mouths. If that were all glass with nothing rubbed in, you would have a much more difficult time seeing the details. And since this glass is all about the details, I mean, the details are so intense on this that we have to rub that into it. I suppose we could rub other colors as well, but that's what happens to it, and it knocks the color back. So we actually have to make trials, and we'll cast different colors first, and then we'll rub black in to see what the final color is, so that we know that we're getting to the right place. Like the amber circle that we saw is a much denser amber color. We can also do them transparent. We're working now with a $15 million condo in Miami to do the doors between 2 rooms in this technique, but with no white backing. Like this has a white backing, so you can see the color. But the transparent ones in the doors, on the French doors of the bedroom, will have the very intense, deeply dry plaster casting, but clear, that light comes through.
Yeah, the colors on that one are a lot stronger color because they have Florida sun going right through their place. Right. These ones, we don't want to see the framework, and we don't want to see hand cleats of where it is, so we just put an opaque behind it so you can't see through to the wall.
Exactly.
How long does it take for the process? Do you have to do it all at once then?
No, it takes months, because first you have to have the theme. Well, that's great, but then how do you translate the 54 tiles that are in each of these walls? How do you find 54 separate images that go along with it? So you have to plan that out. Sometimes we have imagery in the studio where we say, oh, this will be, the first 10 are the easy ones, right? After that, we start making things to make it to be the exact thing we want to say. So we have to start making things out of clay. We have to make molds off of those. So it takes about 3 months of working and working hard to get to that level.
No, I meant the actual glass process.
Oh, overnight. Boom.
No, it's 2 nights. It's got to anneal a long time. So I give it another day because it goes up and down in probably about 16 hours. But then we got to let it sit in the plaster for another day until it's ready to come out. Because it's a real thick piece at the center, say, like where the nest is on that piece. That's much thicker than the surrounding edge. So I don't want to put the glass under stress. I will just say we can be patient. It's difficult for Tim, but then you can take it out.
Right now it is.
Well, I'm sorry. When you say you rub black in, are you putting kind of fruit powder around it?
No. There's a kind of paint we get from France. It's a transparent paint. So believe it or not, that's a transparent black. It comes in a variety of colors, but I use that transparent color to keep the look of the transparency, but without covering it up. So if I did like a non-transparent black, it would dull out all the areas around the castings. So we fly it in from France just to have this kind of paint, and that gives that beautiful detail without losing the transparency.
Brilliant.
Thanks. That took a long time to figure out. By the way, all these things seem like we just started it, but we've been working on them for 50 years. We just never thought that we would be the people to make it come true. I'm so glad we decided to try it.
Mr. Tate has had a solo show on Artsy. So.
I do. So mine is called The Persistence of Aftervision. It's sort of like if there's a flash and you see aftervisions of, around there. Someone just went around the corner and you're sure you just saw them. Because these endless mirrors of mine, I like to use those quite a bit. There's only a few of these on the Artsy show, so you can go through it now, Aaron, and we'll go to the next one, and I'll go through on these. Those are just detail shots there. And of course, all these are on artsy.net. Right now, I have several pieces. In fact, both the right-hand pieces are mine in the Transparency show at the Tacoma Glass Museum. It's been there for almost a year now. And I'm very proud of those particular pieces. Those pieces are now coming out and will be part of the Artsy show. And so if you take a look, this is the very first one. This is called We Rose Up, part of the Transparency show, which is the LGTB glass show for Pride Month in Seattle. He's obviously the Vitruvian man, but he has this red plus sign on him. What I'm trying to show on this, if you go to the next one, please. What I'm showing on this piece is I am a person who lost many, many friends, as many of you did, to the AIDS crisis when it was happening. I guess there's a correlation to COVID now. But now, at that point, I lost so many people. But in these tunnels, that 4-foot tunnel that you're seeing there doesn't exist in any reality. It's in our heads, right? We know it doesn't exist, but yet we're looking at it. And because it's in our own mind, we can give it any physical properties we want. So in these pieces like that one, I see everyone I lost all those times to AIDS. There they are. They're saying, we're okay. It's so good to see you. Thank you for not forgetting us. So I'm using that as a memory of all those who passed, the legions of people who died from that particular pandemic. Sometimes I just do things that are like achingly beautiful. This one is already sold, but I might be doing some other floral ones if people like floral ones. And I did a Mrs. Dalloway piece like this that I just happen to love. As we all know, the first lines of Mrs. Dalloway are, today Mrs. Dalloway thought she would buy the flowers, being the first line of feminist literature, some people thought, because she was breaking from her prescribed role and going into London, which she wasn't supposed to do. So anyway, some of these I just love for the Victorian ornamentalism. This was kind of a challenge. I wanted to do an abstract, and I also love black light. So I grew up loving black light. I was a kid in the 60s, and so I just wanted to try an abstract version of that, and that's what this piece represents. There's the piece you saw on my table in the video I was doing with Kathleen Elliott. That is the finished piece. It is, I believe, already sold. A gorgeous thing. She and I love working together, and we've just started yet another one, which is the next slide. I'll give you a little peek at it. It's not done yet. It's also on my table. That one's coming out too. Another gorgeous one. Her lamper fits so well on these frames that she and I really love working together.
I think those are like trees that wrap
Those are
around the
trees.
whole
So
thing.
the whole perimeter around the circle is going to be small trees, and it's going to be called the forest. So when you look down, you're like looking at a tunnel of a forest, which is going to be kind of beautiful. So,
It does have a haunting quality.
It's
I just
going to
love
be
it.
an impressive piece. I know it. I do want to let everybody know that we have a special announcement at the end of this PowerPoint that I'm eager to share. And so if you stick around, you'll maybe be able to see something very exciting coming up very soon.
Another baby, Aaron?
What?
Another baby?
Oh, please, God. I don't look tired enough. All right, here we go. And we welcome now Michael.
This is my solo show.
Does anyone have any questions on the ones they've just seen on my show before we can move on? Everybody good? All right.
I also have a show going on at Artsy coming up in a couple weeks. It's going to be going live. It's a show that deals with my frit work panels where I'm doing portraiture based on with images and figures. And I like the idea that within these pieces, I'm showing how identity is created when you're looking at faces and how you perceive them and what the differences between reality and perception can be within these works. Next slide.
That red one we saw back there was a Harlan's house, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's Marilee Orsini has one in her house, and this is the one that's at Harlan's house. And these are large scale. They're about 60 inches overall dimension, so they really kind of have a strong presence within the spaces that they're in. Next slide. And then these current series, I like the idea that you're kind of questioning, you have many minds on one thought and that sometimes they're conflicting. So I like that sense that you're picking through someone's mind within these pieces, that you're kind of exploring a lot about them within one piece, that there's sometimes a duality, sometimes there's something that's a little bit conflicting within your own mind, but you're able to go through that. The title of the piece is Feel Like I'm Dreaming. This one is Current State, that's there. And also on this one, I explored a little bit about how sometimes when I do use an enamel background, so that the white part of it is actually an enamel, and I just like that kind of painterly quality that's coming through on the bottom of this piece.
That's beautiful in person.
Yeah, it looks stunning.
And this one is called Intersectionality, which is kind of dealing about how a lot of times you perceive someone to be of one thing, that you see them, you size them up, and they might not be that way at all. But because they're a young person, an African-American, that they're wearing athletic wear, you start saying they must fit these categories. But a lot of times they have different aspects of their lives that you're not aware of that actually takes them out of where you pigeonhole with that person to be. Next slide. And also I like the idea of even playing with the abstraction, saying, I like the idea of doing portraiture, but how do I start making it so it's a merge between abstraction and start using the strong colors, the pop colors of different qualities to really make it have a punch and a dramatic presence to the piece.
Now, Aaron, before you go to the next slide, we want to say Michael on the next slide did a beautiful commission for Aaron's wife, if you all know Sarah. It's one of my favorite pieces of his that he's about to show you, but it just, well, I'll let you show it, but
I'm going to say too, before I had done these really very clean kind of images, I had done pieces that had dimensional castings onto it. I think I had done a commission piece before with Jim Deloff with these butterflies on that I talked about at a previous talk. And it's something where I like the idea that these cast elements are throwing a shadow and they've got a dimension to it so that it's not just a flat take on the artwork. And Aaron actually approached me saying he has an idea for his wife to make a gift, that he wanted something special. So we had talked about it in detail about where elements would be, and he wanted it to be much more of a romantic feel to the piece. So I'm going to let him go to the next
Without further
slide.
ado, I will show you my wife's birthday gift. that person, but I'm looking forward to it in real life.
There she blows.
He's beautiful, and Sarah is ecstatic, and we're looking forward to having this in our home very soon.
And
So
so
pretty.
it is mixed media. So there are the drawings. It's got cast glass elements on it. It's got the way that the light and the shadows go on to the thing. It's really something where I like the way that the light around it would always be changing a quality around it.
It's very
It's a decent-
Gustav Klimt in person. If you like Gustav Klimt, that's what it looks like in person. It's just gorgeous.
So here we're sometimes mixing and merging different techniques to tell a story. And again, that is a hallmark of what Tim and I do individually. It's like we want to draw you in, and so that you always feel like that you're finishing off the story as the viewer of the artwork to say that's what the meaning is, even though there might be something that's kind of alluding to within the work.
And thank you guys so much for doing this for me and making my wife's birthday so spectacular and memorable. And I'm looking forward to hearing, sharing more about this piece and the story behind it once she has it in her hands.
There
Okay.
you go. Next slide. Oh, go ahead, Michael.
That's us.
That's us.
We work together. We're, sometimes get along better than others. Sometimes
Yes.
Tim can be, Tim.
Those are Mary Van Klein's. Those are Mary Van Klein's photos.
I have a
Yeah,
question
myself.
I have a question in the chat room asking Tim, what do you use to attach the glass to the mirror?
The glass. It depends. Usually, it'll be a very transparent silicone because I want to kind of buffer it so the glass isn't hitting glass, especially if I'm shipping it. So I put a very thin layer of clear silicone on it. You don't ever see it, is the beauty of it. It's just kind of there. But so then it's attached pretty much. I can move it if I have to, but it's attached pretty good. It's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, are there any other questions from people?
Yeah, any other questions,
Open it
guys?
up. Let's turn it into because I think that's the last slide.
That is.
Goofy. But do check us out on Artsy and Habitat Galleries.
Of course.
Yes, in the chat room, I have posted the links to Tim and Michael's Artsy presentation, should you want to open them up and look at them anytime, now or later. So I will be posting the last one for their collaboration work also to the chat before we leave today.
So Michael or Aaron, could you put back the grid view so I can see if anyone has any questions?
Well, I would do that. Give me one quick second to stop the sharing.
There it is. Hi, folks. Nice to see faces again. Is there? Yes, ma'am. Dale. Oh, you're waving. Hi. How you doing? If anyone has anything to say, just unmute yourself now. It's a good time if you have any questions at all.
How long does it take each one of you to do, let's say, a commissioned piece? How long from start to finish? Is it a 1 month, 2 month, depending upon, obviously it's depending upon the scale and size, but Michael, for a 4-piece panel, I mean, those seem like they take a tremendous amount of time. And Tim, a wall installation also seems like it takes a lot of time, but I'm just curious about how long, and maybe some of our collectors might be as well.
The big walls that you're seeing there behind Aaron, for instance, that took us 3 full months. So a full-size wall like that, that's us working almost all the time on them. Fortunately, there are days in between where we can work on other things as well, but that's a full 3 months, and we're talking about it and trying new things all the time through the 3 months. So we're casting things that did work sometimes after it didn't work. We look through all those until we have the exact right ones. We still have a dozen left over from the first couple ones that we just decided wasn't right for this, but maybe we could use in a different one. So it's such a process of give and take between Michael and I as we go through it. But it's such a labor of love, if you can imagine what that is, to kind of, as we both try to outdo the other for a really good, succinct way of doing it. We'll show each other the next day when we come in. It's like Christmas. We'll open up and go, what do you think of this one? It's a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and we kind of go along that way. But it is constant. It's not like we just do them overnight and send them in 3 months. It is a lot of interaction of Michael and I. We touch them constantly, and we touch each tile with the same amount of gravity as any tile that we have in there.
And a couple things. We had done a commission piece, Tim and I, for a Scottsdale collector. And it was a thing that it was, they wanted no direction. They wanted to give us no direction. They just said, make it based on what we know of them. So that's what we kind of really hashed out what each concept would be for that. And that one went pretty quickly because we kind of agreed on different keystone elements that would be for that work so that we could start saying, I'm doing it this way. This is how I'm showing a marriage. We wanted to say, how are we showing rings? Are we doing it as a casting with a wedding ring? Are we doing a drawing of wedding rings? What symbolizes wedding for that? And so we would kind of hash it out and we start it in a direction, and whoever got to a good point would show the other one, as Tim saying, this is what I did. What do you think? And so it can work pretty quickly, but it is a debate. We go through each item and it is considered as we work on it. And in relation to my work, yeah, it's a slow process. I'm moving around powder a little bit at a time, and I've got to fire it, and it's got to go up and down in temperature. The commission piece for Aaron was a pretty straightforward one where I said, this is the concept, I'm going through it. And because of the COVID, I had an empty studio that I could kind of work almost unhindered by saying, okay, this kiln has to be used for a class or another project. I was able to just go 1, 2, 3. But even then I had times where I'm saying, I'm making the cast elements, how big are the flowers to be on that? Because originally I was gonna have much bigger elements. And then it came down to when I made the castings, I didn't like the scale of them. So I had to go back to get smaller elements to make it just a more delicate feel to the piece.
So
there are
Dale,
some
you were about to say? Dale's about to ask a question.
David.
So I assume that the wall pieces are pretty heavy. How are they attached?
Cleat, French cleats. So they're not as heavy as you might think. They're divided into 3 by 3, 3 foot by 3 foot panels. So that giant wall is actually six 3-foot panels side by side. So they're approximately 30, 40 pounds a piece. So they
No, I'd say that, no, each grid is probably around 40 pounds, a little bit heavier. Yeah, so it's you know, and we're able to anchor it in with 3 different connections on the back cleat. So we know it's a good sturdy thing. We didn't want to make it too heavy because Tim and I have to hoist it up to the wall and mount it there. And I'm trying
We're not as
to
young as
kill
we used
myself.
to be. That's right.
As you see in that early shot with the 2 of us as we aged. Yeah.
To Michael and Tim, we think of you both every day, and we are grateful for the joy you brought into our lives and for the brilliance of your creations. Thank you.
Who is talking? I want to thank them. Oh, there. Oh, thank you. Oh, there it is. It's Harold. How you doing, guys? Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I mean, I hope you see the depth, and I hope you see the stories we've told there.
Really has sparked us to make more of these pieces that kind of response. And so that we have actually renewed a whole new direction for our works.
Thank you.
Tim, how
I'm gonna
is
jump in. Go ahead. Who's asking the question?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
How is the piece, the round pieces, mirrored pieces, how are they attached to the wall?
Cleat as well.
Cleat.
We do everything with French cleat because we used to have very complex ways to hang, and we realized only we could hang them. So we've stopped that, and now we put them on a French cleat. The beautiful thing about hanging a round piece on a French cleat is it doesn't even have to be a level French cleat. You can just turn it. So that's what those are all made for. All those just hang on a cleat and just slide right on. You never see the attachment again.
Got it. Although it would be nice if you would come and visit and hang it yourself.
You know, after COVID, I will go anywhere. Where do you live? I might drive over now. I don't know.
You're down by in Florida, by Tampa, right?
Yes.
Don't tell them, Dale.
Oh, good, because they have a whole crew ready down there to install. Just tell Corey you want it installed. There you go. Done.
Okay.
That's
So
right.
as we're winding down the meeting and we're welcoming more questions, I just want to get through the preview I promised earlier of by Tim Tate and Lucy Lyon that are going to be seen here first. The first piece was seen first in Sofa Chicago and sold instantly. This was the first one. If you want to tell us a little bit about it, Tim?
Sure. This is the first one called Neo. We wanted to do, both love George Toomey paintings and Edward Hopper paintings. And Lucy and I started talking. We wanted to do something we called the Metropolis series, where it was kind of a moody, otherworldly kind of look. So on this one, we took a George Toomey painting and we decided that endless row that he always would paint, that we would try to do it in these kind of soft gray tones where someone was coming down. He looked sort of like Neo in The Matrix, so we called this one Neo. And that was the very first one, and we loved it so much that we have decided to work together again, which is there. There's the next one. This one is one of the new ones. This one's called Josephine, and Josephine was the name of the wife of Edward Hopper. So we thought we would put that was the perfect name for her and her dog, because they had a dog. And so this one has both of them, and you see the depth you get inside these. So it still has that kind of moodiness, but you still see there's so much depth. Again, these are also smaller scale, so they're 36 inches high and 14 by 14, rather than the giant wall hung pieces. So
this work is absolutely, it draws people in. At SOFA, the piece we had on display, nobody could walk by it. All eyes were on that first piece, and we're be able to share this piece, Josephine, and
that's
the
Josephine.
next piece. So I'll show a short video.
Oh, sure. There's a little video there. Oh, there you can get a real good idea of what kind of depth you see inside of these boxes. No matter which direction you look at, you see it goes on for thousands of women down this endless hall and the dogs. But also, we decided they needed a son. So we made Marcus and Milo. He has his own dog. And Marcus and Milo is the third of all of them. So that's the third one in the series. No one has seen Marcus and Milo or Josephine before. So we thought, well, this is a good point. This is a good time to introduce those pieces. I hope you find them as lovely as we do. For instance, in this one, I cast the dog, Lucy cast the figure. So that's
Gotcha.
my dog, Lucy's figure, right?
So I want to wrap this up real quick. If you need and you have any questions, you know where to find me, and I'll definitely will be in contact with Tim and Michael anytime. Love to talk to you about their work, their collaboration work, and I want you to check out their Artsy exhibitions. We'll be posting links and sending out newsletters about that real soon.
Does anyone have any questions here before we go? Oh, sorry.
Let me just do this and I'll get back to you, Tim.
Oh,
Next week, we're going to be doing a Getting Personal with artist Peter Bremers. So I just want to give you guys just what our next topic will be about. All right, there, we're back.
All right.
Any more questions, please ask away now.
There you go.
I want to do
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Can I do a quick shout out for Tim and Michael also? They've lectured for me in classes I've taught around Baltimore. Fortunately, we only live about an hour from each other, like 4 or 5 times. I think I've gone to see their studio 5 or 6 times. They've been extraordinarily generous, and everybody enjoys the talk. So thank you both very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's nice to see you too.
I see in the chat room someone asked, do we have our individual narratives on the full narrative? And in a way, we do. We sometimes within the larger narrative, Michael and I have streams. If you look, they tend to be connected to what's nearby. So Michael and I will have our own little connections that we do within the story. So we've, you know how when you read a book, some chapters relate to others, and then you have a different thread. We see it the same way, where within the main frame, we also have our individual narratives that kind of intersect within it.
It is really a collaborative piece. It truly is, because it'll be a thing where if Tim does not like it, and he will come in with that scrunched up face saying, I just don't like it. If I can't argue it through, then I have to make a change until it is something that we both agree on.
Let me phrase that better. We both have veto power. If either one doesn't like it, it doesn't go in. And we do that so that we never feel like anyone is in charge of anything. In other words, we want to make sure that it's fluid. But if one doesn't like it, that means that it goes out of that panel to another panel.
Yeah, and it also is a thing where I'll see his work as he's working on it, and I'll get inspired to say, oh, but then I can connect it this way to another piece. Since you've been going in that direction, I want to have that, because we talked about the boat theme is one that we've used a number of times, and we've done castings of waves, and we have boats in there. So it's a thing that it gets us excited for the next piece or the next part of the story. So we kind of build on it. So it does evolve over time.
Yeah, if I know Michael's doing a boat, I may do one with a fish. I mean, we can also intersect that way. So there's 100 different ways that we do each of these styles. I mean, we've done so many hundreds now of the individual. You're seeing just a few here. We didn't put all the images up of the ones we've made, but just to give you an idea what's in that show.
And because we work with each other and have for years, it can be very shorthand in terms of how we communicate ideas and stuff. So it is a thing that as he comes into the studio and he walks by what's being worked on, he will come to it with fresh eyes and start saying the relationship is different now. So can we move this to this?
That's great, guys. I appreciate the insight. If anybody has any more questions, this will be the time. We've almost reached our hour. So I want to thank Tim and Michael and everybody for coming to join us at this presentation this week. And I'm learned a lot this time, and I'm really grateful to have both of you guys in the Habitat family.
We love it too.
Thank you so very much, guys. I appreciate all the support you give it. Many people in this room have supported Michael and I since the very, very beginning. So you know who you are. God bless all of you all for being there for us. Because when you do something odd like us that's outside the box, many times you can be ignored. But the people in this room have not ignored us, and we appreciate every friggin' one of you.
Well, thank you, guys, and have a great weekend. Happy Father's Day to everybody.
Yeah.
We'll look forward to seeing everybody next week. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, all.